Welcome to the Deer Hunter Podcast, a platform created to entertain, educate, and evolve the modern-day deer hunter. Good morning. It is morning here at the studio of the Deer Hunter Podcast, and I'm playing catch up. It is 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. What's the date? The 23rd of October. Man, deer hunting is about to get really good. Actually, it's been really good. I'm playing catch up this morning because I've been out of town the last 3 weekends up north hunting. And holy shit, have we had some encounters, man. It's been a wild start to the season. And if it escalates from here, I just don't remember having this much action ever this early in the season. Usually things start slow and ramp up. And I mean, from our first weekend out, man, it was nice buck encounters. And it's been that way since. Some wild stuff has happened. We're working on this film project, and it is a project. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it's coming along. It's going to be cool. We've captured some really exciting encounters, and man, I'm excited to put it. I can't talk about everything right now. My producer says, "Hey, don't spill the beans on all this stuff." So before I go into detail, which we'll talk about some of it here on an upcoming podcast, the guys are going. Ryan and my cousin are down in Ohio right now hunting, and my brother's been up north to some different spots that I haven't been, and we will probably convene. I know Bomarito's been out duck hunting. We'll probably get together here sometime this week or next week to just go over everything that's been happening, and I'll have to get clearance on some of the things I can and can't discuss just due to the project that we're working on. But reason that I'm on here this morning, I recorded this podcast a week ago with Dan Infalt. It's about capitalizing on your opportunities come this season, staying ahead of the game, not playing from behind, and really a lot of it too is about just how he approaches his in-season scouting. And like I said, I always feel like I'm playing behind. You know, you're looking at stuff that's already happened and trying to predict the future, and how do you connect the dots on that? It's a hard thing to do. It takes a lot of time. I think Dan reiterates that, you know, it's always a work in progress, but anytime you get an opportunity to sit down with Dan and pick his brain and see how he's approaching things, how he has in the past, and what adjustments he's made, and how he handles himself now after all these years of, you know, being a pretty consistent big buck killer. Well, you don't get the name big buck serial killer on accident, right? So, we ran that giveaway from Day 6 Gear. Brian is going to build a set of Day 6 arrows. We had just under 100 entries, and I just writing them all down on pen and paper as we went because it's been chaos around here, and I cut them all up, threw them in a hat, drew one out this morning, and where did it go? Here it is. Colt Nichols was the winner. So Colt, when you hear this, get a hold of me through, it looks like you contacted in through Instagram. Get a hold of me through Instagram or however, and let's have a conversation about what bow you're shooting, what your draw length is, what weight and type broadheads you're shooting, and we'll get you set up with a dozen new arrows. So other than that, I don't think I really have anything to talk about. We'll just get right into this and enjoy the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Dan.
Hey,
How you doing?
pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm struggling to keep up. Struggling to find time to get out and deer hunt and take advantage of it, man.
Gotta get out there, man. Life's short.
I probably don't need to be telling you that, huh? How's things going?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah. Are you busy? I imagine by this point in time, I know you guys had anticipated having some sticks out to people from that pre-order. Is that the case?
Yeah, it's pretty hectic right now. They're all getting shipped out, and some of them have even been arriving at people's places, so
Oh, great.
exciting times.
Heck yeah. That's great. How long has your season been open for?
Around the 16th of September or so it opened.
Have you been able to get out much? I know you guys went and did some driving around to, where did you go, to Minnesota?
Yeah, we did the Public Land Challenge up in Minnesota.
Have you got to hunt much aside from that?
Yeah, I hunt almost every day.
You have been.
Missed a few days because of rain, and my wife hasn't been feeling good, but other than that, I've been out just about every day.
How's it been so far?
Oh, it's been a little slow. I've been seeing lots of bucks, but nothing I really want to kill, and just doing the grind.
Do you have any, like, bucks is there anything that you're hunting from, like, last season or the last couple seasons, or do you guys have trail camera photos or anything, or do you got a plan in mind? I haven't really got to talk much to you at all.
I've always got bucks I'm onto. I mean, there's probably about 5, 6 of them that I was watching right till the end of the season last year, and some of the ones over by the Conservancy were pretty big. I mean, getting pretty close to Boone and Crockett, so I'd really love to get my eyes on them this year. But as of yet, I haven't seen them. But they'll be around.
You have access to that again this year?
Yeah.
Right on. How big of
I drew some good times.
How big of a factor is that? That's something I actually wanted to ask you. I have right here on my list about how much you are, I guess targeting deer from the year before and taking into account their previous patterns. I mean, as a 2.5-year-old, are they patternable to 3.5 and 3.5 to 4.5, or is
No, they start getting more patternable when they get 3 and older. Mostly when they get 4 and older. The younger ones are just I don't know, they move around and change a lot. But as they get older, they kind of settle into their ways. They shift around a lot,
Is that just a product of the 1.5 and the 2.5-year-olds, like being young and figuring it out, and then them actually getting a spot where they're comfortable and settling in there and establishing a pattern?
I don't know, what causes it. I just know what happens. I know those old ones get more locked in their ways. As a matter of fact, when they get into the bedding areas and stuff, if they get to be like 5, 6 years old, they're easier to kill than the small ones. I mean, you can't kick them out of a bedding area. They'll live in one area and just stay there. You get a 3-year-old that's real big or a 2-year-old or something, you bump them and they'll go a mile,
It's funny you say that. I hear guys out west say the same thing about mule deer as well, to the point where you can even shoot them and wound them, the old big ones, and they'll come back, within a week's time or whatever. They'll be right back in that spot. Something to that. Well, anything else new and exciting going on? What I wanted to kind of cover tonight is just I was shocked when I saw that it's already like the 10th of October, and I'm like, man, things are just flying by. Like, I look so forward to this all season, and I want time to slow down this time of year, but reality of it is I started a new job and have a lot going on, and, I'm paying closer attention to where and when I hunt than I, have in the past, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, gosh, man, like, I wanted to maybe focus a little bit tonight. I know you've been hunting for a fair amount of time longer than what I have, about just kind of taking advantage of your season and not letting it slip outside your grip. And I know a lot of what you're doing is in season scouting. You've talked about that like so many times and say it's so important, and I'm finding that to be the case because it's so hard on bigger tracts of land and on public land if you haven't been there, especially, and you don't have history with it. It's almost just like you have no idea what's going on and where it's going on, and you're almost wasting your time. I feel like sometimes if you're not, even if it's scout 1 day, hunt 2 versus hunt 3 days, I'm finding that to be very beneficial. It's a hard thing to do, but it seems to be working for me.
I see a lot of these guys that go into the season thinking, well, it's early and I don't want to burn my area out, and they just kind of take it easy going in. It's too hot or it's too rainy or whatever their excuse is, and they just kind of hunt mildly, and they're waiting for like the rut to start kicking in or whatever. And my message to them would be that my very biggest bucks, my oldest ones, have come more from opening week than they have from during the rut. Now, don't get that wrong. I see more bucks and I can kill more bucks during the rut, but not more big old ones. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So they're losing a big part of their season by skipping out on early season. Michigan's a little later than us. I mean, you open October 1st, but you still got some, a good week of catching those bucks off guard before people have really been on them, But, getting back to kind of what you said about the scouting and stuff, I actually, I kind of took it in pretty well this year. When I went to Minnesota, I noticed how, I had no problem getting right on the bucks because I was scouting the whole time. I was on a mission. Back home, I've gotten kind of a rut where I got things to do. I've got 3 businesses, and my wife's sick, and I've always got this to-do list before I go out hunting, and I'm not getting the scouting that I should be getting in this year. But look how fast I got on the stuff on the public land challenge when I didn't have any distractions, and I just scouted and hunted. And that's the mindset a guy's got to have. Is he's really got to put his time in. You take one day and a Saturday or something that you're going to hunt, and you scout a whole section and then hunt the best spot. You're going to have way more action than if you just routinely go to spots. You know what I mean?
I do.
And that's worked out well for me. I mean, I put a day of scout and I usually get on something. You can just keep hunting the same spots over and over again. And for me, it's a different spot every night, obviously. But if I'm going in with less intel, I do less damage. Mm-hmm. I would rather walk around and burn a few spots and find some sign and sit up on that sign than just go to a spot you think might be good,
Sure. God, it's so fresh on my head. We went hunting this weekend, and we went and checked out the forestry property that I hunt is all Big Woods timber, and we went and checked out a cut that was done this spring that butts up to a big swamp, and we're just looking at it, and we're like, man, that should be good, so we're going to hunt it Saturday evening, and we wanted to be sitting in the stands by 4 o'clock. Well, we got in there just following terrain features on a map, kind of following the edge from where the cut was to the swamp, and there was a little bit of stuff in between it, but we weren't finding anything that looked good, and we're getting concerned because it's getting late now, right? It's 4 o'clock, and we wanted to be set up by 4 o'clock, and we're trying to set up 2 stands and a camera, and but I was so I just didn't want to waste a sit, and I felt like it was a wasted sit to just get up a tree just because it was getting late. I'm like, let's keep going, and we did. We covered some ground, and we found a place an hour later that looked good, and we got on some bucks, and we had a real good encounter. But I would have never done that in the past, and I'm just like, we wouldn't have saw that buck if we had done that. There's just no way.
Yeah. And that aggressiveness is what gets me onto a lot of stuff.
But it's hard.
I cannot do that. What you were just talking about, get up a tree just because it's time to hunt. I can't do that. I can't hunt and leave the ogre sign. I can't hunt what I don't believe in. I just don't have the confidence to do that. I just won't. I'll go home. I have to believe in the spot I'm hunting.
You won't even give it a try. You'll go home.
Yep. I got to believe in what I'm hunting. Every hunt I go into, and now remember, I hunt every day. I fully believe I'm going to kill a big buck in that hunt. That's the confidence that keeps me out there, that drives me till the end,
Right.
I fully believe it, and I can get up, wipe myself off after not seeing or killing anything, and go out the next day still fully believing I'm going to see one.
How do you go about... I'm sure you're going to tell me that it's just a thing you learn with time, but there's got to be certain things that you look for, and you could break this down in whatever manner you want. I know it's a broad question, but, sometimes I struggle with, have I gone far enough, or am I going too far? Like, how do you pick that where you first get into where, you're like, this looks good, this feels good? I mean, because you could be talking 20 yards is the difference between being successful and not being successful, right? So you can't necessarily just gamble with it.
Yeah, I just did a hunt the other night where I went out and I'm hunting this little finger that goes into a swamp, and the bucks are bedding in the dogwood and cattails and trees mixed. But you got to go through some real thick cover. You got to go through beds. You got to jump a couple bucks to get out there. But they're satellite bucks. You got to get to where the big ones are. So you got to maneuver your way through there as stealthy as possible and get into the middle of this, or you won't see anything big. And most guys are going to end up setting up where the little stuff is. They're going to set up on that edge when it starts getting thick, when it starts getting wet. And the biggest thing for me is I've looked at so much buck bedding, and I've had so many encounters with bucks around bedding that I understand that I can look at the terrain. It's really hard to explain to somebody, but I can tell you where they're going to be. If there's one in an area bedded, I pretty much know where he's going to be.
Right.
If there's one there I want to kill, and that's how I go in there. And I mean, you can see the setups from other guys where they get close to what I'm doing, but they're not going into where I'm going. I mean, there's spots out here that are in these marshes and swamps and stuff where there's just heavy pressure everywhere. And to me, these trees will just glow like, how could anybody look at this and not think that's the absolute spot you got to be? But you get out there and there's never been a guy in the tree. I mean, there's not a limb cut, there's not a screwed up hole, and that's where you got to be. And once you get good at reading that terrain, where you can look at the terrain and know, that's when you get it. And I can't teach that. That takes some years of hunting like this.
Mm-hmm.
It takes some encounters. It takes some going out and scouting every spring hard. Guys got to spend as much time in the spring out there scouting as he does hunting, or don't expect to grow as a hunter. If you're a scout once or twice and then go pound stands the whole hunting season, you're not learning anything. The scouting is what teaches you, is you're really learning. And then another thing is when you have an encounter, like say you're out there now and buck does come by, I'm making a mental note of that, and in spring I'm going back out and I'm backtracking and finding exactly where he came from and why he was there, what was going on. I don't leave those stones unturned. I want to know, because those things will repeat themselves too, and I think that mindset that I have and that ability to look at the terrain is really what sets me apart.
So to break that down just a little bit, the terrain features. So myself included, a lot changed when, and I'm guessing it did for you too, when digital maps came available, and now basically most guys that are going out hunting have a smartphone with an app on it where they can see these maps. Can you describe, I know you talk about the transition, but is there something that, guys can look at on a map and like
Yeah,
start?
there is, but
Let me ask you this.
The trouble with it is every map is different. Every property is different.
Right.
And what'll hold a buck on one property won't on another. And you got to be able to see what is the best terrain. You know what I'm saying? And it's hard to explain.
You know what? I got a better way to phrase this, and a whole better way to approach what I'm trying to get at. How did you start when you guys decided to do this public land challenge? I mean, I'm guessing you sat down and looked at some maps before you guys ever drove there and put boots on ground. So can you kind of walk me through?
Okay, with the public land challenge, when it was decided upon what area we were going to hunt, I had it in the back of my mind. I look at some maps and online and find some spots, and I think I spent about 4 hours one day doing that. And I looked at some properties, called some people. Most of it was dead ends. Got some ideas, and went out there, and I looked at the time frame. It was, mid-September. So I figured the bucks are going to be in the acorns. I mean, acorns are huge, so it's like a giant corn pile, right? So if deer are in acorns, I know that terrain over there was hilly, but it has some low-lying swamps along the river. That's what I was finding by doing this research for 4 hours. So I felt that the bucks in the hills are bedding on the points, and they're going to get up, and they're just going to eat right there. And the guys that hunt the hills will probably see bucks, but they probably won't be able to kill them. They'll probably be jumping them or, walking up on them, but they won't be able to kill them because they're not moving. So my idea was to get down in the swamps, find isolated oaks, because the oak trees in the swamps at that time of the year, the bucks are going to travel to them. They don't bed at the oaks. They're going to bed in the cover near the oaks. So if you find isolated oaks, every deer in the area is going to go to them.
Nice.
But when I got there, what I found was none of these swamps were like the swamps back home. None of them had oaks. I drove from swamp to swamp to swamp checking, and they all had old sign from before the acorns and from rut the year before, but no current buck sign. So I spent one day working at that, and the first day I hunted a spot that was okay. I mean, there was a set of big buck tracks going in and out, but there's no fresh rubs or anything, and I wasn't even positive it was a buck. It could have been a gigantic doe or something. But I saw nothing, and then I decided right there that I was abandoning ship, and we were going to find oak trees in a swamp. So I made some calls to some people I know, and somebody pointed out a swamp that was about 3 hours from where we were camped that had oaks in the swamp. So we drove 3 hours to over there and looked over the place, found a remote area, and there were some islands back in that swamp that you could see oak trees on. And we found a real remote area. We got back about 2.5 miles and started hunting there from where you could park. And we went island hopping. And when we got into Sign, we started hunting and staging our way back, one island after another into Sign. And we're finding rubs that were waist high and large diameter, so we knew there was something good in there, so we just kept working forward and took turns on who hunted what we thought was hottest, me or Joe, because we were working as a team. And when Joe was up, he shot that old buck. And we did that in, 4 days?
2 of which were spent scouting?
What's that?
2 of which were spent scouting? Boots on ground?
I scouted and hunted. I scouted all day. I didn't hunt mornings. I got up at dawn, went scouting, scouted all day, and then hunted in the best spot I found.
I got you. So
the majority of the time was spent scouting, but I hunted every day.
Right. Yeah, that was an impressive deer. He had to be... Yeah. He's still got to be excited.
Yeah, Joe was just tickled, and he was the right partner to pick. He's really a killer, a solid killer.
Yeah. It seems that way. I just chatting with him a little bit. I know me and you had talked, and I'm gonna have him on the podcast here at some point. But that was very
Yeah, you
enjoyable.
should. He really knows his crap.
Yeah, no, I want to. Those are the kind of guys that are hard to track down and hard to get on.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've been doing this a long time. You make it sound easy, but for guys that are potentially just getting into or hearing about this style of hunting, I mean, you got to have you guys
Well,
utilize.
you got to get past the magazine crap too. I mean, you got to go out to where the deer are and the people aren't. That's just period. So it's more than just the terrain. There can't be people getting out there. You got to think of a mature buck as a wise animal. You think about how much hunting pressure you have on your public lands. Those big bucks are living where people don't go. There's very, very little land on that public land where people don't go. So if you think about it like that, and you can think about how people look at things, and you can narrow it down to those spots where people don't go, and then you just need buck terrain, bedding terrain, or whatever. You need those features. So if you can look at a property and you can say, well, I ain't going anywhere over this whole point or this whole ridge or this whole woods because it's high ground and there's people all over the place. Look at the marsh by my house. I mean, this place gets so much pressure, it's unbelievable. I mean, there'll be 50 cars in a parking lot opening day of gun, in every parking lot. And you look and it looks like a pumpkin field, but yet I go out there and I get it done. And the same with bow season. I mean, there's guys all over the place. There is already. But I'm still going out there and getting it done because I'm not going and sitting in those wood lots or over a cornfield or 100 yards from a cornfield where a trail comes out of something thick. I'm really going back into the spots where those bucks live.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are remote, some of them are right under everybody's noses, but they're places where people don't go. There's one or two scrubby trees or nothing to get into.
Yeah.
And there's nobody hunting out there. You got to go through muck up to your knees or your balls. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I very seldom come out of the swamp without my boots completely full of water.
Yeah.
And nobody else is doing it.
Well, that's a huge line of their defense for their bedding areas, right? Is having to go through that stuff just for other predators too, right?
Right. I mean, it's not just humans. It's coyotes, wolves. It's the history of deer. They've learned that if they surround, in swampland anyways, lowland, which Michigan's full of. I think anytime I look at a place like Michigan or southeastern Wisconsin, I'm looking at swamps because the high ground just gets pounded. Those deer are going to be in those swamps, and they're going to be surrounded by water with those beds. Predators don't get at them, people don't get at them. That's where they're safe. They'll just sit there until it's dark, and then they'll just start making their way out.
Right. Yeah, I looked at a bunch of high ground this year in Michigan, some stuff that I had never seen before but looked real good on a map. And, yeah, it looks like it would be good, but I find hunter sign everywhere I go. So
Right.
I'm not really taking much stake in it.
There's guys that'll go to the middle. There's guys that'll, hunt right next to the parking lot. But nobody's going in the water, and nobody's going adjacent to the road in between parking lots. You got to think about the spots where people don't go, and that's where I'm killing the majority of my big bucks.
Right. No, I can't get that thought out of my head too. And the other one that I heard you say is I'm not hunting sign. I'm hunting a topographical feature adjacent to bedding, and now I can't get that out of my head. So every time I'm looking at a map, that's a good one though. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Like to keep that in mind. Is you can't consciously think that and not look at a map differently or not approach your deer hunting differently.
Yeah.
Do you
the biggest buck I ever shot bedded in the same spot for 2 years. I watched him. And there was never a rub or a scrape within 100 yards of that bed. I picked up one of his sheds in that bed and I killed him right in the bed. I snuck up on him and shot him in his bed with a shotgun. And there was never a rub or a scrape anywhere near that bed. But there was a terrain feature.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I gather that. I scouted way more this summer than I ever have in the past, and it's just kind of funny. It's part of the reason why I wanted to do this tonight is because so I scouted all summer and I had like some pretty good ideas and plans going into the season, right? But then we just went there last weekend and we hunted the first morning and I scouted around. I'm like, it's just there's no fresh sign. It just doesn't seem like deer are in here, and I don't want to waste time. Let's go take a look at something else. And I would have normally in the past not done that, but I did do that, and it's got me rethinking my whole season because I was a little bit invested in all this stuff that I scouted real heavily over the summer and spring, and now I found some stuff last weekend that just trumps any and all of that. And I'm like, God, I'm just going to focus my efforts on this. I got to write all that other stuff off.
I went and scouted for a guy last spring. Guy called me up and asked me if he could hire me to scout some public swamps in central Wisconsin. He had a couple he wanted me to look at. He sent me some maps. I marked them up. I went out there, and one of the properties was I don't know, like 400 or 500 acres. I spent about 20 minutes in there and told them we need to find someplace else because I went to the best spots and there was no sign. And if there's no bucks in the best spots, there's just no bucks. I mean, there's a little sign. So we went on to the next marsh, and I spent about 20 minutes in there and said, "There's nothing here." Then I got out a plot book and started looking at some stuff and found another marsh that was public. A ways off, we went there, and there I found some big bucks, and then we scouted them down. But how many people waste a whole day or a weekend in a place where there are no big bucks? You got to be able to get in there and know if they're there. And if you know how to read the terrain and you know how to read those features, you can go in there in 15 minutes and know if there's a big buck there. Because you can go into those best bedding points and stuff, and there will be sign. Big bucks can't live someplace and not rub their antlers somewhere. I mean, you look at them, you shoot a big buck. I mean, they got bark in their burrs, right? And their burrs are worn down. They're rubbing their antlers.
Yeah.
If there's no rubs, there's no big bucks. Doesn't mean the rubs are going to be in the bedding areas. But if you go into the best features on that property, there should be big rubs. There should at least be a few. There should be big tracks. You should be seeing sign. And if you're not, don't waste your time there.
Are those the two biggest factors when you get in there into that feature is rubs and tracks?
Not necessarily if you're in the bedding area, but I better be seeing them on the property.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whether they're around the food, the trails to and from the bedding. Usually the big rubbers around the bedding areas are 2-year-olds. Sometimes 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
When they get older than that, it seems like they move away from their bedding areas before they rub. Occasionally you get a mature buck that makes a rub line right to their bedding area. But for the most part, it's usually the younger bucks. It seems like the old ones start to realize that they're making a travel route right to their bedding area or something. So a lot of times it's, like out here, we'll see an area that gets ripped up with rubs around a bedding area. And then one year, there's no rubs around there, and you find out some big buck took it over. So it was actually better to hunt when there was less sign,
Do you think that's
what happens with that rubbing is here's what the guys got to understand. When bucks rub around their bedding areas and stuff, every place they rub, it's like a competition with other bucks. So they're like competing with other bucks is why they're rubbing. So when they rub up a bedding area, it means multiple bucks are bedding there. So usually in these public lands like me and you hunt, there's usually one big buck. Usually 4 or 5 of them, right? There might be 4 or 5 2-year-olds, and that's why you get the 2-year-olds rub up those bedding areas. But those mature bucks, they don't have to rub up everything. No, nothing will challenge them. They can just take that area over.
Right.
Like when I go and scout properties for people that have managed land, like when I go, hang out at Andre's, say, and look at his property, you'll see his bedding areas have mature buck rubs all around the bedding, but he's got tons of mature bucks in the property. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you got giant rubs that are like waist high all around a bedding area, you probably got more than one mature buck in
Yeah, Todd Havel said a lot of times he'll find those big signpost rubs, that the ones that are
Hmm.
just half a tree, the size of your waist, and half the tree's carved through, the where he feels like a lot of times mature bucks travel patterns will overlap, or territories kind of meet together, and that's like their corner post where they say, hey, you stay on this side, you stay on that side. And I found that to be an interesting
Hmm.
take on that. Is there anything else, like, I mean, tracks and rubs, if you get to a spot and you can't find
One thing
those?
that's been killer for me has been scrapes. When you find a scrape right up against bedding areas,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times what that is there's two buck bedding areas adjacent to each other, and if they make a scrape in that staging area that's 75, 100 yards from their beds,
Mm-hmm.
usually it's because that's where the two bucks meet. That's the spot where each one comes out when they stage. And I've killed a lot of my biggest bow kills early season over those scrapes. Usually well before a scrape even shows up. You think of scrapes in mid to late October, right? I've killed some of my biggest bucks on scrapes in September or the first weekend of October, when they're adjacent to bedding areas.
I'm going to lay a little scenario out for you. It's just something that I came across last weekend, and I had a buck encounter there, and I went and looked at it, and I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to go back there this weekend. I mean, the sign was red hot. Um, but I'm not exactly certain how to set up on it. So I'm going to try to explain it briefly. Essentially, there's a clear cut where the state came in and logged out, and now there's new poplar growth, 6 foot tall poplar trees. And we watched bucks and does in there last weekend, and they're just plucking those poplar leaves off like candy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just loving that stuff right now. So to the south of that is a swamp, and it's like a cedar swamp that goes for, let's say it's 100 to, at some spots, 250 yards wide, and then that turns into a river bottom with grass, tall grass, dead trees, not much down there. And every deer we saw last weekend went and dropped in. There's a low point in this cut that drops down into there, and all the deer followed that low point from any point in the field.
In the evening?
In the mornings too, where they were already out
Sure.
there and they came in. They followed that down. We only got to hunt it one evening, and there was deer actually bedded in the cut. As we were sitting up in the tree, deer were standing up in this stuff because there's, drop logs everywhere, 6 foot of cover. So they're bedding there, but they're also bedding down in that swamp. Right on the south side of the cut. So if you had a north wind blowing to there, a north wind is blowing from the cut down into the swamp.
Mm-hmm.
In that cedar ridge that drops down into the swamp, there's, just as beat down of a trail as I've ever seen, and there's a scrape the size of a car hood. There's big rubs, and that's where they're coming in and out of this, and then they're going down into that swamp from there. And
The trouble with that is that low spot is right in the evening or at first light. Your thermal's dropping right to it.
right,
So no matter where you go around there, you drop milkweed, your thermals go down there, and that's why those bucks feel so comfortable in that spot.
right.
So you almost got to get them coming to or going to that spot, because it'd be hard to kill them down there.
Yeah, and that's like the only. In the cut they left a couple tree, but you'd be skylined so bad you wouldn't have any cover at all. You'd literally just be sitting out there in the open. I suppose you could hunt it from the ground in the cut,
Yeah.
off that trail.
Is that trail going to be downhill from you?
Well, yes, yep. So I guess
Yeah,
that's
the
gonna.
thermals are going to get you.
And I don't even know what direction the wind I would want, because my thought was, if they're cruising that downwind side of that cut before they enter, that I could possibly get downwind of that and set up on that trail.
I would be looking at that, and from your description, obviously I'm not there, but I'd be looking at that from a distance and thinking, okay, how can I get in there and get downhill from that trail?
Right, I can. But then my concern...
That's what you got to do, because otherwise you got to think about what's the wind going to be doing at dark, not what's it doing when you're out there.
Right.
Because obviously you can't have your wind direction blown in the wrong direction.
Right.
But when it gets calm, like it does almost every evening, thermals are going to take over. So you're going to feel the wind in your face, and then it gets calm. But what's happening is when it's calm and you have no wind, the wind ain't going the direction you think it is. It's going downhill. Because when the sun sets, thermals are going to pull downhill.
Right.
So that's why they always come into those lowest points of a field, lowest points of a feeding area.
It's all dropping in there.
Everything goes down there like a toilet bowl, right down to where they're standing.
God, that makes sense.
And they can smell the whole area.
That's exactly what I witnessed. All the deer used that. You couldn't really see it from sitting up in the stand, but when you got down there on the ground and you walked across, and we're talking, we were set up on the other side, so we were 200 yards from it.
Reminds me of that hill bedding video. You watched that, didn't you?
Yep, a couple times.
You see that where I keep seeing those bucks down on that bowl like that. So I moved down there, and what happened? They're all busted me, and I remember that, and I say, I know better.
Right.
If there's some big 10-pointer coming and bust me, I know better than this. And that's the thing, you have to find some vulnerable way of killing them. If you go down there and you try to push your luck and get in there and just cross your fingers, what's going to happen is the deer are going to come in, they're going to bust you as game on. They all know they're being hunted now. Not try and kill them. So you have to pick a day. You got a brisk wind. When that wind's not going to stop at the evening, you got to find a way to get downhill from that trail and shoot up to it, so that your scent goes downhill. Or you got to get further enough back, or far enough in the direction you're going that your thermals aren't affecting it. And sometimes you just can't do it. It's just too tough,
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, because we're going up this weekend, I was thinking all in on that spot this weekend just because it's so hot, but now I'm thinking I might just go scout it a little more in detail and try to just have a real good plan for gun.
Maybe you got to get further back. Maybe you got to go to where they're coming out to that bottom out of the cedars and go right into those cedars.
That's what I'm wondering. Or well, the cedars aren't too thick. Like I said, they're a couple hundred. Yeah, but they could be bedding in those cedars, or they could actually be even to the next transition back between those cedars and where that that river bottom is some tall grass. I mean, it lays down when it gets snow on it. It's not real tall. It's not like cattails, but there is some spots where that gets grass is tall enough where they're probably pretty comfortable, and there's a little bit of deadfall in there and some dead trees.
They're not going to be just in the middle of the cedars, unless there's a high spot like an islander or something.
Sure.
They're going to be on one edge or the other.
Yeah.
They might be in 100 yards, but they're going to be on one edge or the other.
Right. Yeah, and that was my concern about sitting that downwind side of that trail, is that I didn't want my wind going into there, provided that is where they're bedded and traveling out of. So I didn't really know how to approach it, but I'm now with you saying that about the wind, that makes complete sense, and I honestly didn't even think about that, but it's absolutely all the wind is funneling right down into that low spot, and I imagine that's why all the sign is there, and that's why they're traveling in and out. And I'm wondering about sitting on the other side of that cut with a good wind, with a strong wind. You could hunt it with a gun. It'd be a very difficult spot to bow hunt, but you could hunt it with a gun. So maybe I'll scout it this weekend and give you my my findings, and you can help me try to figure it out in a little more detail. Well, those were my biggest things that I wanted to cover really tonight was the in-season scouting thing. Like I said, I don't know, just personally, it's always a struggle right now. Like you said, it takes years of doing this, and I haven't done this for years. I'm kind of on my second year. It is really important. That's one thing I was going to mention and get at. I mean, you got to have a lot of ground to do this, right? I mean, you're utilizing public land. You can't just hunt your whatever your access is if it's 10.
Well, I hunt small properties the same way I hunt big properties. It's just a matter of you can't go out there and pound that small property every day and expect to get the results that I'm getting. You're going to burn it up. You're just going to push them onto the neighbors. You'll do worse hunting it every day than hunting it twice a year.
Right. I guess that's
the
what
guy wants to hunt. And the problem with people is they feel like they paid for a property, they lease a property, or they have permission on a property, and then it's probably better than the public. So they just keep going there over and over and over again, where they'd be much better off spreading themselves out and trying some new stuff. And even if they fail on that public land, it's going to make them a more well-rounded hunter. And they're going to get better, and their property's going to get better too, because they're not pounding the shit out of it. But by hunting that public land, they're going to learn more about different terrains. They're going to learn how to read the stuff. They're going to learn how to scout the stuff. They're going to see more scenarios. Just walking the trail to your stand back and forth every day is not going to teach you nothing about hunting. You're going to be the same hunter in 10 years that you were today. Trying new things and going out there and testing your skills against, big properties and public, and everybody's got it, whether they want to admit it or not. People say, I've got this little 40 I hunt, and I got to watch how I hunt. You don't have to watch how you hunt it that much. You go hunt someplace else. You don't have to pound the piss out of it. Nobody's forcing you to do that.
That's what I was trying to stress, right? I mean, you can't have 10 acres and be scouting it, every week and expect to be successful.
Right. You get 10 acres, you might have one spot you can hunt on there. And maybe, because you're 10 acres, put your stand up there, and maybe you can hunt it 3 times a year, or you hunt any more than that, you're screwing it up. I mean, my rule is this on a property is you want to hunt it less than your neighbors. You want to have more pressure on the properties around yours than on yours. You want those deer to feel safe on yours. So the property that I have that's private, is Dave's farm. And that's 70 acres, but it's almost all open. There's very little wooded. And what we do there is we generally hunt observations. We sit back and we watch, and when there's a kill buck coming in, and you see something you want to shoot, then we move in for the kill. But otherwise, we're hunting the perimeters, we're hunting from a distance, we're watching with binoculars. I just sat there the other day and did an observation. I had 3 bucks come through that never knew I was there because I'm a long ways away just watching. But none of them were shooters, so I backed off. I'm out hunting the public now, and I didn't burn the property out because I didn't go into the kill spots.
How do you know when it's time to... I'm imagining it's a product of years of doing this, but... I mean, sometimes if you're waiting too long and you see the sign... I mean, it seems like things change real rapidly this time of year, like week to week almost.
They sure do.
And you can't make a plan for this week and then count on it to be the same. I mean, it just changes so rapidly. So how do you stay ahead of it? Like, how do you foresee? I mean, obviously, if you're looking at sign, it's something that's already happened. So you're like constantly.
You got to be scouting all the time, and you got to have a head on your shoulders where you can start to compute what's going on. There's certain times of the year things are going on, like the acorn drop, then you got the maple leaf drop. You've got certain plants that are hitting, you got certain crops that are hitting. And a lot of times I'm checking food sources and stuff away from the bedding and just seeing what they're eating. I'm not just walking. Even when I plan to hunt a spot, I don't walk from the truck to that spot. I scout my way and I follow transition. I'm looking at the sign around me. I'm not walking out there in a speeded hurry to get to my stand right down the hiking trail where everybody else walks. I want to look around and I want to see what's going on in the woods and know. And you got to do that all the time, or you're not on top of the game. You got to see what's going on. You got to know what they're feeding on. You got to know where they're moving. A lot of it has to do with cover. I mean, certain bedding areas, they're only bedding there when there's leaf cover. You can't understand that when you're scouting and you find these big beds. And you're like, oh, this is great. If you're looking at it and saying, well, they're laying in the wide open sun, there's something wrong there. They need cover, So if there's trees there and you're thinking, okay, when do they have leaves? They only have leaves till mid-October. Pretty good chance the first 2 weeks of the season, that's where they're bedding. That's when those beds were pounded down. You find a bed that's just tore up with rubs all around it. That tells you it's probably a buck in pre-rut, probably late October, early November bedding there. So you got a 2-week period that he's probably in there. So you got to start using your head and dissecting stuff. I mean, you got a bedding area that's a good spot to bed, but really there ain't a lot around there except for a cornfield. Well, it's probably when the corn's there, they're bedding there. You got to start to decipher why, and ask those questions. Why are they here? And then the thing is, too, over time, you'll hunt these bedding areas or whatever, and you'll see a buck. You'll see that same repeated pattern year after year. You'll start seeing, okay, this spot really produces at this time of the year. And, some of them, like some of my bedding areas, produce it multiple times. But I know that if I hunt it pre-rut, something big always stages there for does. So I don't want to waste my time there or spook it or booger it up early. I wait till that pre-rut time period to hunt it. So, yeah, it takes a long time to start developing those skills, but the longer you put into this, the more you get out of it, and every year you advance a little bit. I mean, look at yourself when you went into this. You're probably doubting a little bit of this. If you go in, you start seeing more and more of it, it's actually happening exactly the way it's laid out. But it takes time. I mean, you got to start putting the pieces together. It's usually like, what I see is these guys that really, really jump in and really start hunting the way I do. It takes them about 3 years before they really start killing stuff, even though the first year they think they're gonna.
I mean, the proof to me is I'm seeing more bucks. It's that simple. I mean, we were on a good buck this weekend. At first, really, within the first 3 sits, we almost, killed a nice buck. And
and most people in Michigan or this area of Wisconsin haven't even seen a buck yet. they would shoot the first buck that came in, and I've passed on, 8, 10 of them already, And yourself, you're seeing stuff, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I haven't even hunted yet. My first hunt Saturday morning. I've been so busy, and last weekend we went, I told a friend I would film for him, and I kept my word on it. I left my bow in the tent, and I filmed all weekend, and honestly, I knew I was going back this weekend. So last weekend was as much for me about getting out there and scouting and making a plan for this weekend, if that makes sense.
The trouble is it changes so much in a week, it's hard to scout in a week in advance.
I've been hunting this particular area in general for 20 years, so I have a fairly good idea of just how it works in general. But I'm going to new spots where I haven't been, but I'm recreating things that I've seen in the past. And I'm just combining that with the most recent information that I can. And in the past, I would have went up there in the last weekend in August, and I would have hung 2 or 3 tree stands, and that's where I would have spent my season. It's that simple. That's what I would have done. And now I have a mobile setup, and I didn't hang a single tree stand on any private or public land. All I did is work on going up and down trees with mine and getting my system dialed in, and I have it dialed in. I'm a huge... it's such a game changer. I just... Man, what a difference. You've been doing it for a lot longer than me. I guess I don't need to tell you, but I don't know, you still got to get you pretty excited now that you have your own stuff and you have things the way that you like it. I mean, I saw that bat wing that's on the back of your stand. That thing looks superior. Is that what you
Wait till
call
you
it?
see the newsstand. The newsstand, oh my God, it's so freaking light. I can't wait to get it together. I just got the platform done. It's going to float away on me.
Really?
It's so wicked. Yeah, I can't wait.
You got to tie it down, huh?
Test this thing out.
You got to tie it down with your bow rope, huh?
Yeah. Excited about it.
That's great. So you just made some improvements to your existing design, huh?
Yeah.
Lightened it up more.
Lightened it up, made a better bow holder that's adjustable. I made it really light, and I changed the way it attaches to a tree so that you could cam lock it. And just took out every piece of weight I could. I think I might even be able to get the next one even lighter. But this is where I'm starting out at. I really like what I got. I think I'm going to have it under 7 pounds. Last time. It's just pretty nice.
That's unbelievable, really. And the sticks are going out, and those are 100% now. Guys can go to the site and pick those up.
Yeah, we're still not caught up. I mean, every time we release them, we sell them out immediately. So we're trying to. We've just been reinvesting everything and trying to get ahead of everybody, but it's been tough. They're really, I think they're really going to take off right now because people are just starting to get them in their hands from the first order.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when people try them, they're really going to start talking about them.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about that. Well, that's great, Dan. That kind of answers the couple questions that I had. And like I said, circling back to the fact that I'm looking at the calendar, I'm like, how is it October 10th already? You know, I don't want to see the season slip away. Got any strategies you've learned over the years for slowing down time this time of year and just kind of taking it in? And
yeah, I just go with what it is, and right now I'll start gearing more into a little more towards rut stuff. You know, the bucks are going to start merging more towards the does. I usually see it mid-October. I start to see that, and they seem to be a little more patternable on it. They start to let themselves be known. Where you go out the last few weeks and look around, and the rubs are hard to find, and they come out of the bed and you don't necessarily mark them and stuff. Now those bucks are going to be starting to leave, rubs everywhere, so and scrapes. So should be able to narrow them down a little better. And when they start getting into those routines, they start bedding more to the rut bedding. They start getting closer to that stuff. It gets a little easier. So
and
you get that little lull in that early October period where you got to be right on top of them, and now they'll move a little better.
Right, we're just getting into the cherry stuff, aren't we?
Yeah, I do pretty good mid-October. Right around October 15th has always been really good to me. But I've killed my share in early October and obviously in early September too. So.
Yeah, you've told me before when I talked to you about traveling to hunt some spots that you did tell me ahead of the dates that most people would typically plan their times to go, and you feel like that's, at least from what you've seen, that's pretty accurate, right? I mean, provided that you're not pounding the crap out of your property and scaring these deer to go a mile away.
Yeah.
They're starting to get more active now, right?
You got to remember how people hunt. I mean, most people want to hunt peak rut because there's bucks running around all over the place and they can get lucky. I want to hunt more on skill because that I can depend on. I don't want to see bucks running around. I want to kill them. And they're a little more patternable coming up to rut than they are once rut gets there. A week or two before that, when everybody gets out there when there's the chasing and stuff, and it's a little easier, at least for me.
Right. No, yeah, that makes sense. Things are starting to defoliate too, right? I mean, they lose some cover and potentially.
Yeah.
I don't know, corn gets taken down, right? I mean, they lose some spots, so they get a little more concentrated as well, right? Is there a big?
Sure,
Do
yeah.
you pay attention? I mean, that's a silly question. Obviously, you do pay attention too, but what have you seen when that does happen? How much do their patterns shift from? I mean, the biggest bucks stay in those areas, but what do the subordinate bucks and the satellite bucks do? They've got to
Yeah,
move around, right?
what I see mostly is it just concentrates the bedding, because they've been able to bed in high grass. They've been able to bed under leaf cover. Once those leaves come down and stuff, they got to start going back into the thicker stuff. They don't like laying out at bare sun. You know what I mean? They like to have a little shade. So as the leaves come down and stuff, it kind of condenses them. But travel-wise, I don't think it's that much difference. It's just that they travel more in daylight when rut comes around than they do in early October.
Mm-hmm. I mean, aside from the breeding, is that why there's probably is a lot of aggression towards each of the bucks this time of year too? Is that they are kind of finding their spot for the fall and hunkering down and competing for ground?
I guess.
Well, good deal. Anything you want to talk about before we?
No, I'm just getting antsy to kill something. I want to go back to Minnesota and finish what I started. So I want to kill one here.
Do you got any big plans for the next couple of weeks? You just hunting close to home, or you got any other trips planned for the season, or?
I play it day by day because you never know what you're going to run into or which way the wind's going to blow or whatever. So, I mean, I never know where I'm going to be hunting the next day until that day's here. But I do plan on. I got a few big ones that I need to hunt down. I know we're in a particular swamp, and I need to get on that. And that's where I'm shifting right now. I'm trying to wrap up the stuff around my house. I hunted most of the really good spots here I wanted to hit before everybody got into them. And I located one real good buck. I haven't seen him yet, but he's rubbing waist high. But there's a ton of people hunting him. There's the parking lot's full, and there's tree stands all around his scrapes and rubs. But I would like to take a couple more shots at him, and then I think I'm going to go after those big ones I left behind last year. But that one, I don't know what he is. I've just seen his sign.
Do you intend on hunting this weekend? It looks like there's a cold front kind of hitting the whole Midwest.
Yeah, the only thing I don't want is rain. I've been sitting out in the rain the last couple of days. I don't like that.
Yeah.
It's hard with camera gear. It's hard on my equipment. And
I hear you.
I went out yesterday and got caught in just a torrential downpour. It was horrible. I waited it out, and then when it ended, I said, well, okay, the sun came out, and I was just kind of daydreaming, looking at a bedding area watching.
Yeah.
And then I looked behind me, and a storm had crept in. I never even saw it coming. I think I heard a clap of thunder, and I looked behind me, and the whole sky is black, and there's lightning all over the place.
God.
I got about halfway to the truck, got pounded a second time.
Jeez.
It wasn't too fun, but
no.
I gave it a go anyways. I gave it a try, right?
It is a nightmare with camera gear, right? I mean, sitting in the rain's one thing, but sitting in the rain with expensive electronics is a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I didn't expect it. They said it wasn't going to rain till like 10 o'clock at night. So I went out there in a T-shirt, and I was in a hurry because I got late from work. So I was wearing slippers.
Really?
T-shirt. Yeah, I just got soaked.
How far did you go? How far out were you in slippers?
Not that far. It was only like 100 yards, or well, more than that, probably a couple 100 yards, but it wasn't that bad.
That's pretty funny though. Caught in a rainstorm in your slippers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we camped last weekend. We hiked into a spot in the rain and camped in the rain and hunted in the rain for 2 days with camera gear and then slept in the rain again. And gosh, boy, I'm
when I was your age, I used to do that a lot more. Now I don't like rain.
Yeah.
I shot one of my biggest bucks in a thunderstorm.
My thing about it this time of year, I don't mind it too much, but with all the leaves on the trees, you can't see very well, and then you take with the rain, then now you can't hear, and it's really difficult. Plus, all the leaves are moving around from the rain falling in between them and stuff, so it's hard to find movement. I mean, it's just I feel like it's a lot more of a disadvantage.
They sit up after the rain and they move. And they move right before rain, and they feel a lot more comfortable in that overcast sky. And I think it's a good time to hunt. It's not too good for filming, and it's not too good for camera gear and that kind of crap. But it's a good time to hunt, especially if it's just light rain.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. But I think it's better right after.
It's better than sitting home on this couch looking out the window at the rain.
But I mean, right after the rain is always when I've seen. So, I feel like that's when I've seen my highest concentration, of activity, especially if it's been raining for a day or two and then it shuts off, and maybe late afternoon it shuts off. That I know that evening is going to be I'm going to see as much deer activity as I'm going to see, for whatever reason that is.
Mm-hmm. I got a giant 11-pointer once that scored in the 160s. I kept watching him from an observation during the summer, and he'd come out of this bedding area and worked his scrape right where it met another bedding area, and some other small bucks came out. And opening weekend, I was up north bear hunting, and I shot my bear, and I came back, and I believe it was opening day of bull, and I raced back because I got the bear the day before. And I got back, I didn't even go home. I had the bear in coolers in my truck, and I ran straight out to that stand. And it was raining, and right when the rain stopped, that buck, like clockwork, right when the rain stopped, it was 11 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock in the morning. He got up and walked right into that scrape, and I drilled him. Wanted to freshen it after it rained.
Right. Yep, I definitely have witnessed. I've definitely witnessed that and heard you talk about that, and can confirm that I have seen the exact same thing. So, well, Dan, I imagine you're ready to turn in for the night, or are you gonna go? You got some sticks to put together tonight, or?
Sleep's for weak-minded people that need that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, you can throw me into that group because I'm gonna get some tonight, but. Thanks for taking the time to do this tonight. I know it's kind of last minute, but these are some things that I've been thinking about, and I'm trying to do a better job this season of keeping my podcast a little bit current. If any guys can hear this and take more advantage of their opportunities that they have this season in the time frame, because like I said, it goes by so quickly, and next thing you know, you're like, boy, how's bow season over, and it's gun season, So just being able to try to look ahead, besides looking back and playing from behind, is kind of my concern right now. Staying ahead of the curve, or at least trying to, or thinking in that manner. So, well, thanks again.
Yeah, it's always nice to talk deer hunt with you.
Absolutely. Maybe next time I talk to you, you can tell me a deer hunting story, how you approached a buck hunt and were successful this year, or maybe I'll get one, and we'll talk here soon. So
that'd be nice. Maybe we can talk about each other's skills, right?
That would be picture perfect.
As long as mine's 1 inch bigger than yours.
That's funny. All right, I'll keep that in mind.
All right.
Okay, Dan, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.